is able to share. Hello, everyone who's joining us. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another webinar of Coffee with Gable. With me are three workplace and real estate firehouses. We're gonna introduce them in a second, but just as a start, a little bit of a house cleaning items. If you have any questions, please make sure that you send this to the entire forum and not just the panelists. We're gonna send the recording after the session, so if you have to drop or hop off, no worries. We have everything for you there. And let's dive right in. Today we're going to talk about workplace and real estate planning, how to account for flexibility in ever-changing world of hybrid and remote. I'll let our great panelists introduce themselves. Jamie, let's start with you.
Jamie or Jana? Sorry.
Jamie.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jamie. Nice to meet you. I'm manager of global workplace at Lattice. I'm based in San Francisco and have been with Lattice for almost 6 years now. I started off as our office manager and have really built up our workplace experience function from the ground up over those past 6 years. Prior to working in tech and workplace experience, I was in hospitality management, specifically in event planning, which has really lent itself to this new world in workplace. And I oversee all of our real estate portfolios, our workplace experience functions, facilities, and internal events. And I'm also starting to learn about employee benefits. So I'm learning and supporting our employee benefits function as well, and kind of learning more about the HR space. As I mentioned, it's a global role. So I manage an office in San Francisco, New York, and London. We have about 500 employees. About 42% are remote and 58% are hybrid. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Margana, let's go with you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So my name is Margana, and I am the Director of Workplace Operations at Branch Metrics, where I've been at the company for about a year now. Prior to that, I built out real estate and workplace functions at Carta Inc. and at Anchorage Digital. And so I've been in the real estate and workplace space for about 7 or 8 years now. And prior to that, I was doing youth development nonprofit work at the Boys and Girls Club. So I currently oversee Branch's global real estate portfolio, our workplace experience and operations, and then also our internal events. And in terms of our global operations, we have 2 offices in the United States, one in Palo Alto and one in New York. We also have a larger office in Bangalore, India, and we also have a smaller office in London. We're about 350 people globally at this point, and I manage a team of 3 workplace professionals. And our breakdown between hybrid and remote is 40% remote and about 60% hybrid.
And Jana.
Hello, my name is Jana Fain-Rawson, and I'm in charge of global workplace experience and facilities at Nintex. I've been there for 8 months, and I started my first week with a build out of HQ. I've been in workplace experience and facilities for as long as I can remember. Been working in tech and software for the last 5 or 6 years. Before that, I actually worked in film and TV and managed facilities and animation facilities, and a lot of similarities, obviously, in the worlds. But I do love this world. We are a global company, and I oversee 11 of our offices around the globe, where our headquarters are in Bellevue. We also have offices in Chattanooga and Canada and Johannesburg. We're in Tel Aviv, London, Melbourne, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Dubai. And I manage a team of 6 workplace experience coordinators and managers around the globe. That is 6 time zones. So I have to be very strategic about my time and when I'm talking to who, and remind myself what time zone I'm talking to. We're in charge of the culture. We partner really closely with the culture team and the facility management and the employee experience. And it's been fantastic. This 8 months has been really, really, really fun. Great group of people, about 1,000 employees around the globe.
Incredible. Yeah, we can talk about time zone gymnastics, which is a sport of itself, to know where you are, who you're talking to, and what is the actual time. Perfect. So a little bit about Gable. Thank you all for tuning in. We're the all-in-one platform to gather your hybrid and remote teams. We have 4 different products. One is the on-demand aspect, in which you are able to provide access to co-working spaces to your remote employees on demand. In addition, we also help you manage your own offices, meaning desk reservation, meeting room booking, and all the data and analytics combined. Visitor management capabilities. This is our latest product, and event orchestration, help you organize offsites or onsites for all of your employees. So then let's start with a poll for the audience. What's the biggest challenge for you in real estate planning in your hybrid workplaces? Okay, let's close the poll. Okay, interesting. Number 1 is providing workspace options to hybrid employees while keeping utilization high. Interesting, curious to hear our panelists on this shortly, but definitely very much top of mind. And I think there are a few data points that we wanted to share in terms of why people are coming to the office. We have done our own personal surveys with Nick Bloom and the Stanford research team, but also seen a lot of surveys being done on this, that the number 1 reason people are coming to the office is definitely not the office, it's the people, it's their colleagues, to collaborate and engage. And Jana, you mentioned like you're responsible for the culture, which is very interesting and very much aligned to this. So I think this is something that is top of mind, that is much more than real estate planning. This is how do you help your employees engage. And I think one of the key things that we see that there are different needs also for different employees. So all our 3 panelists, and I'm sure also our audience, have both remote and hybrid employees. I'm not even talking about only in-office employees at this point, but they have different needs, right? They are using the space very differently. You somehow need to create this flexibility in an existing work environment that feels like an unsolvable problem, right? How do you create this? But this is the challenge, and I think the opportunity that workplace and real estate leaders are currently having. So I'll dive right in with questions, and the first one will be to Jana, actually. How do you approach basically your real estate planning in this hybrid environment? You have 11 offices, you have remote employees. What metrics do you use to really assess the effectiveness of this strategy? Walk us through this.
Great question. I do think Nintex is a bit unique in that a lot of their growth came from acquisition. So a lot of real estate was acquired as the company has been growing and building. In the last 1.5 years, a new CEO came in who feels very passionate about more folks being in the office more often. A lot of the leases that we inherited are expiring. So we're actually using that opportunity to reduce a real estate footprint, but expand the offerings that we're providing in the offices. And like we just did a build out with HQ. We actually just renovated and upgraded our space in Johannesburg, which it literally looks like it was from 1972. They're so excited to go back in. And we actually have very high engagement. And I do attribute a lot of that to culture, but a lot of the way that we're planning and moving forward and thinking about growth is obviously we're partnering with the talent engagement, we're partnering with HR. Where is our growth going to come from, and what sorts of teams are we looking at? Based on obviously data and my own observations, some teams are more social. Our sales teams are very social. They want to be in more, not so much our engineers. So sometimes it's looking at, okay, do we start with a co-working space? Do we see how things go for 6 months? I'm constantly evaluating our portfolio every 3 to 6 months. When is the lease expiring? What is our plan? Are we staying where we are? Are we reducing? Right now, because this is sort of new with the CEO and a lot of folks have been remote at Nintex even before because of the global aspect of it, it's employee choice. And what we're doing now is we're tracking trends. What teams are going in when, how often are they going in? Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? And right now it's working out really, really well. Folks are able to see who's in, they're engaging their teams, or they're hosting workshops on other days. And we're actually getting pretty high utilization in some of our spaces, and some of it's cultural. Some of our spaces, a lot of folks are going in and then some aren't. And so we're trying to dig in there and see what's going on. So it's sort of a mix. And I think because Nintex is in a unique space, we don't have a tried and true method, but that's where we are right now.
But I think this is the common thread is iteration and testing and using data to make decisions, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is important, right? Like, and then what you mentioned, like I'm constantly evaluating my real estate portfolio every 3 to 6 months, as opposed to, pre-pandemic, you had 10-year leases. What could you evaluate, right?
Exactly. And predictability. And I think I saw Margana, I hope I'm saying your name right, made a note. It's so much harder to plan in a hybrid world because there was so much predictability before COVID. You knew who was coming in, you knew what your utility bills were going to be. When does the HVAC need to be maintenance? What's happening here? It's sort of the Wild West now. And you're right, tracking the trends and analytics is really kind of driving even to a budget perspective. And I think we might talk about that later, but absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. And this is actually a great segue to Morgana. How do you optimize workspace use at this point, right? You have 40% remote employees. A lot of them, the rest are probably gathered or have the option to go to the office. How do you maximize, real estate efficiency in this world that, at the end of the day, budget is top of mind, right? And what are the key challenges in this process and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, with efficiency and our real estate portfolio, right now it's about securing short leases wherever possible. It's about 18 months or shorter for us. We also just got a new CEO about 3 months ago. And so the strategy is continuing to evolve in terms of what our business priorities are and where the company is heading. And so right now, signing a lease even for 3 years or 5 years may not make sense 2 years from now. So we're really looking at shorter leases. We're also looking at smaller offices. We know that people aren't coming in 5 days a week. We've implemented a hybrid program and a hybrid schedule for our employees, but we're not expecting or requiring anyone to come into the office more than 2 days a week. And so that equates to having smaller offices and smaller footprints where we have team neighborhoods rather than assigned seating. I would say most of our offices doesn't have assigned seating, and instead we do team neighborhoods. And with this hybrid schedule, we've implemented one anchor day. And so that's a predetermined scheduled team day where you can come into the office and cross collaborate with other teams. And then employees can then choose one other day that works best for their schedule to come into the office. And we try to keep a 10% vacancy for any one of our days. Typically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the days that we see the most office attendance. But really what that means is that we're getting more efficient space use. People are able to share the space that previously was seen as like, well, this is my team space or this is our neighborhood. And so we've really been able to maximize our space use and be more efficient with it. And right now, I think that the biggest challenge, and everyone probably feels this, is the need to stay flexible, really. Businesses continue to change rapidly, and the microenvironment that we're in is so unpredictable. And so we really need to be able to pivot quickly and support those business changes as they come up. Because we need to be good stewards of the budget. We need to be good stewards of the business, right? And we also need to then promote and create a great company culture. So for me, it's about adapting and just really having that growth mindset and knowing that every day that I wake up, it's going to look different and the business priorities may change. 12 weeks ago, I didn't think I would be in Austin, Texas, opening up a new office over here, but here I am. But I also see it as just a really good learning opportunity. And I'm just really thankful for a company or just in general, the industry to provide all of these challenges because life is not boring in workplace.
Yeah, that's a good tagline for this probably 4 years. And we're gonna maybe one quick follow-up questions on this is, you mentioned one anchor day. Why did you decide on one anchor day? What was the goal behind that? Is it mostly the maximize the utilization for one day, or is it mostly for the collaboration engagement?
Yeah, this is the second time that I've returned a company to the offices, and this is the first time that the drive to get back into the office was not for office utilization. It was really for to increase collaboration and this intangible value of being in an office and eating lunch with someone and learning about what they do on a daily basis, or hearing the product team talking about what the future strategy looks like. It's really about that cross collaboration and the relationship building. That was our drive.
Amazing.
And then we used a lot of data to create the schedule. We pulled a lot of information from Gallup and Flex Index as well, in order to find like where that sweet spot is to where we were meeting employees where they were. We know that employees want to use an office. They just want to use it on their own terms. And so we really tried to find that middle ground that created the structure so that we as the workplace team could try to anticipate what our use would look like, and then enough flexibility so that employees had that optionality to still live the life that they need to live with that flexibility in mind.
I love it. One, data is everything, in my opinion. I think this is like, how can you make decisions without data at this point? It's like an organized chaos, basically. You've helped create in a good way. Jamie, question to you, and I know Lattice very well, and there is a transition to a distributed workforce, right? And how did your real estate planning and decision-making process has changed since Lattice is growing more distributed everywhere, hiring everywhere? Walk us through this a little bit.
Yeah, great question. So Lattice's, obviously our in-office policy has changed a lot over the last 5-6 years, as many other companies have, between COVID and I think currently like the economic uncertainty that I think a lot of us are facing. So I think what's been challenging for me is, while we still really value the office experience, we don't have an in-office requirement for our employees. So as others mentioned, like it's just really hard to plan and really know what the utilization is going to be. But that sort of put us in a position where we like you said, someone else mentioned that, we can't take on these long-term leases anymore. So we really have to think in sort of shorter increments, which is great. But then we're also straddled with some longer term leases that we sort of had pre-COVID, or some decisions, during COVID, we kind of thought we would have an in-office mandate. So we went on and got a 40,000 square foot office in New York. And then they sort of flip-flopped and changed their minds, the senior leadership. So then now we're stuck in this lease that's this floor plan that's way too big. So luckily we're winding that down, and we're going to be hopefully moving to a much smaller space. But yeah, I think it's really about having that opportunity to be in the room with senior leaderships to like influence those decisions. Cause like I was not in the room when they decided to make that change to our policy of in office. So had I had that opportunity in the future, it would have been nice to, be able to point out, okay, well, we don't need a 40,000 square foot office in New York. And just, kind of think a little bit more logistically and strategically with the leaderships teams. So I think that would is something that I'm working towards now as we kind of mature as a company. And yeah, I think we're just like not in a position to want to take that risk of these longer term leases.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've also recently kind of implemented Gable to test out in some of our international spaces, like in Ireland and Portugal, so that those teams have the ability to collaborate together.
Incredible. And I think in general, this is a really good point, right? Like, do you sign a 40,000 square foot lease and you have this, indefinite cost at this point? Or do you utilize this for flexibility or testing out and iterating? I think this is a very important thing. And to your point, it's really important for workplace and real estate to be in the room when these decisions are being made, because it affects, at the end of the day, it's not just space, it affects employees. and the overarching strategy of what we as a company are portraying, I think. And I think it's super important, and everything that you've mentioned. Jen, I wanted to ask a bit of a follow-up questions on the cost management aspect as well. And you talked about, again, culture is top of mind, but how do you balance cost management with providing this, flexibility and high engagement, as you mentioned? How do you measure, cost effectiveness in that sense versus employee satisfaction, and how does it come into play?
Great question. And I loved what Jamie said about being in the room. It is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've inherited a portfolio or inherited something, and I'm like, why? Why did we do this? Can someone tell me what's happening? So the managing the budget. So like I mentioned before COVID, it was very predictable. You had your budget, you knew where your money was going, you knew what was happening. We don't have an anchor day. It's also employee choice, but as I mentioned, we are tracking trends. What teams are going in and when, and we also have neighborhoods. You can book wherever you want. However, we have designated neighborhoods just so people feel like they're seeing the person that they want to see, having the in-person connection, collaborating where they want to, taking the opportunity as some of these leases expire, reducing the footprint. But again, expanding what we're offering in terms of more open space, more private areas to have meetings, making it feel much more casual. We see so many meetings now in our headquarters and our kitchen area because we put these really cool booths in there. So the utilization of the space is very different than it used to be. Managing the budget in the hybrid world, I mean, there are cost savings. Look, you're saving on rent because you have a smaller footprint, you have smaller offices. You're saving on parking because not everyone needs a monthly pass. Some people just need the daily pass. You're saving on snacks. So the way that we're looking at it, each of our budgets is very different depending on the space. And as we're looking at and evaluating, for instance, in Melbourne, that lease is coming up. So I'm trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Tracking the analytics, who's in, how often are they coming in? Why are they coming in? Are they coming in for our events? And sometimes what we've tried to do is we have created a bit of predictability. So in our regional offices, we've asked for a weekly event. We know that this thing is happening every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. Then every quarterly, we're doing global events. So everyone wants to go in and be a part of that in the office. Oh, I want to see this person because I know globally in South Africa or Malaysia or Bellevue, they're doing the same thing. They want to feel like they're a part of something. So we're trying to drive some of the attendance with the events, and then vice versa, as we see folks coming in on other days, what other things can we offer to continue to keep them engaged as they're coming in?
And I think this is so interesting what you said about events, and I'm wondering if Magana or Jamie, you want to talk a little bit about event strategy. We've seen this as a really big uptick in general, whether those are offsites or onsites, or having, I would say, a much more robust program around events and intentional gatherings, I think is probably key to a lot of these initiatives. So curious to hear your thoughts or anything that you would like to share.
Yeah, happy to jump in. Yes, events definitely help drive office utilization. Last week, actually, we just hosted all of our engineering, product, and design team, and we had about 200 people on site, which was probably one of our biggest days in our San Francisco office. So it's nice we have the space in our headquarters and our New York office to be able to host these larger groups. And so, yeah, really trying to do a lot of team on sites, which I think is great because, as we mentioned, like, we're distributed. So a lot of these teams don't get to interact with each other, even though they may be all in engineering, but they're in different pods. And so I think it's great to kind of be able to see things more holistically when they're able to kind of all be together. So definitely team on sites is a big one. We also do like a monthly happy hour, and we do some sort of like monthly, we call it like a sprinkle. We've done, like, we did massages on site one day, or we do headshots, or we'll just bring in treats. So like, we're going to be celebrating Latinx Heritage Month coming up soon. So we're going to do like elotes in the office. So just like little things to help, again, just like a little bit of surprise and delight, but also drive that engagement in our offices. So I do think events really help. And it just allows people to kind of connect more cross-functionally.
Yeah, I think what you call a sprinkle, and you also mentioned a surprise and delight. We do that on a monthly basis as well. We also partner with our ERGs for the event portion of our ERG programs. I will say, and this probably hopefully helps others out there, like our event strategy has changed quite a bit over the last, year and a half since I've been at Branch. And we still haven't necessarily landed on what that looks like. We are like super sure that surprise and delights on a monthly basis bring people together. That's when we see some of our highest office attendance as well. I think it's always up in the air in terms of these like large scale gatherings, whether or not the like return on investment is valuable. And I think that's something that I feel passionate about, such as our end of year parties or what we call like our mid-year office celebrations. We invite our remote employees to get together if they're in a region where there's 10 or more remote employees. But it's always a challenge to try to really express the value of bringing people together for these larger events if it's not at an office or if it's not related to the workday. And I think that is something that I want to continue to push because I see the value in that. If we're really pushing like bringing your full self to work, I think then it's not just about being at the office, but it's about these social components as well. And Stephanie, sprinkle and a surprise and delight, just from like my perspective is these little ad hoc or even like regular instances where you bring people together in an office, whether it's through a happy hour or we did a boba bar on site. Next week, our interns are doing a little, I forget the title of it, but they're doing like a little thank you ice cream social. They really wanted to put one on. And so it's just a way to bring people together in a social way.
Incredible. And I think one of the things that we see actually is there is a lot more focus on core team or smaller teams on sites and offsites as well. Like there are research that shows that you should enable employees that you want to make sure that they feel connected and engaged to come together at least every 6 months. There are lasting effects for it. Funny enough, there are diminishing returns if you do this, like if you try to bring them from everywhere on shorter than quarterly basis. So that's also an interesting insight on that. Like there are, like we said, like employees want to have the flexibility, but you still need to have the program around this. But it's interesting to see that there are many approaches to what's the purpose of gatherings and events, I would say, and also the sizes of those and how do you orchestrate them at scale. And I think that's also part of the challenge in that sense. I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about data, which is again my favorite topic. And I think wanted to ask Morgana, from your perspective, and we touched a little bit about data, but how do you leverage data to make decisions, whether this is opening office or closing or anything that's related to that? And if you can, if you have any examples of a decision that you've made that improved workplace strategy based on that. Oh wait, Morgana, you're mute.
Great. So I love data. I think, in what would be an intuitive decision, if I can use data to support that decision, I think it speaks volumes to leadership. We track our office utilization. We do not track attendance, but we track averages of who's expected to be in office versus who's actually in office. And we look at that from a global scale. We've just implemented an event satisfaction survey as well as we track our event participation. And so we've got kind of our KPI that we set on a quarterly basis that we track to, in hopes that if we try something new and if it works, that's wonderful. Let's double down on it. If we try something new and maybe it's not as popular, we can look into our feedback and understand why, if our participation rate wasn't that high. This is pretty standard, but it's something that I found ultra valuable recently, our monthly budget versus actual reconciliation meetings with finance, just to really understand, like, are we meeting our budget goals? Because budget is so top of mind right now in this economy. And it's just something that, like, when I have these conversations with finance, I can then bring it back to my team, and it brings more ownership to the work that they do, as well as they're managing their vendors in their day-to-day. And then honestly, it's just all about summarizing the data in a really digestible way so that there's these really like easy and big numbers. And then really quickly, an example of a data-driven decision was around our New York office. So we were in this beautiful high rise in the financial district. It was a great space, super professional, but it really wasn't Branch's vibe. And our office attendance was suffering as a result of that. And so when our lease was coming up for expiration, we had an opportunity to not only save the company money by moving to a smaller office, but also really rethink what that employee experience looked like. And so I ran a commute survey to understand where in Manhattan was best for our employees. We also tracked our office utilization over the last year. And then that was Augusta used to work at Branch. She's awesome. She just commented, sorry. That was so beautiful to see her there. And then we also ran an employee survey as well to understand what amenities people wanted in the office, what type of vibe they wanted, what they were looking for in an office space, and what made them want to come into an office. And so at the end of the day, the data really helped us make that decision. We were able to cut our footprint in half. We saved the company $250,000 annually, and then we also doubled our office attendance within the first 2 months after moving to our brand new office in Midtown South. And it's this really cute loft space with brick walls, and everyone loves it.
This is an excellent story. Excellent. Wow, that's amazing. Jana or Jamie, any other data aspect that you are tracking or would like to share?
I could speak and just sort of echo what she was saying in terms of the data before we opened up, when we were in the middle of the build out for our new HQ. I definitely ran a lot of surveys. What do people want? What do they want in a new office? What do they want to see? How do they want to work? And each team works in a very different way. And we definitely use that to drive the build out. And then on the opposite end of that, in our office in Kitchener, we only have 10 folks there. So for me, it wasn't necessarily making sense that we had an office there. Were people even going in, and did it make sense? So I held open office hours, and I had people come talk to me, very honest. Yes, I need a space to go. I need to get away from my wife, my partner, my spouse, my husband, my children. Please do not close this office. If one person's saying it, 3 or 4 people are thinking it. And so I ran a survey. Is this a place that you're using? How often are you going in? And we were actually able to keep it open because I was actually able to present that. And like Morgana was saying, in your monthly finance meetings, you're looking at this and, does this make sense? It did make sense because it was important to them. It was important to them to be together and to work together, but we actually had the data to prove it after I'd had these conversations. So very, very, very important. And also we're being asked to do so much more with so much less. So it's even more important that we're able to present this in a way that makes sense to the powers that be, to finance, to our executive team.
And I think there is one thing that you mentioned right now that I think is really crucial, is that you are being expected more with less. And I think that's really important in terms of how do you even make a decision, right? And this is a really good segue to one of the questions I actually wanted to ask Jamie is, how do you leverage technology, right? Because at the end of the day, we are making data-driven decisions. We're really trying to optimize. And wanted to ask Jamie if you can share a little bit about, what role does technology play in your day-to-day in making those decisions, and if, there are specific tech solutions or things that you think are important to have as part of tech stack or workplace to make those decisions.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really tried to do is create a consistent experience across all of our offices. So for me, that's really about like automation and documentation, so that you're kind of sharing the same information over and over, and you're making you're able to sort of drive people to what you need them to do in order to like get them access to the office, or set up like I said, if they're visiting versus recurring access. So I think that's really helped us and is an important technology. So we use Jira to kind of build out forms and have a service desk. It also helps us track trends of things people are asking for. And then we use Notion for all of our documentation. So again, I think because I've been at the company for so long, a lot of people come to me directly and they ask me a thing, and I can at least just say, okay, well, here's the Notion page. It has the instructions of what to do. So that, saves me a lot of time and effort of sort of holding people's hands. We use Epoch, and I think someone had asked about events and like feedback. So we use Epoch as our like events reservation software, and we have a consistent feedback form in there. So we ask the same questions for each event, different if it's a virtual event versus an in-person event, but that way we can kind of track some of the things are like, was this a good use of your time? Were you able to interact with someone new? Did you come into the office specifically for this event? So that's been really helpful and sort of helps us streamline some of our events. As I mentioned, we work with cable, so that just really lets us have the flexibility of booking office space without having to have a lease. We also I just finished wrapping up implementing Stable, which is a virtual mailbox. I think that's been one big challenge for me is one, I don't know who the mail belongs to, and no one's really comes into the office to collect it. So having it be virtual is really going to save us a lot of time and effort, and really just make sure that like all the other departments, finance, accounting, people team, payroll, benefits, all sort of have one virtual mailbox. So it really, I'm very excited for that one. I also similarly ran a commuter survey, but I was able to modify it. So we could send remote employees a specific set of questions and our in-person, and really just sort of like tried to understand like why people were coming into the office and maybe what was sort of deterring them. And then sort of on the remote side, just trying to understand like what they sort of needed from their remote work experience. So that was helpful to get that insight. And then similarly, Lattice, we do engagement surveys, and I think someone asked about pulse surveys. So I'm able to sort of gather the data and the feedback that we get from those surveys and be able to kind of understand how our employees are feeling. Good news is our teams really like have a lot of connection. And I do think it's a lot because of those in-office experiences that we're able to provide.
Incredible. Rest of the panelists, any other software technology that you think is a must or something that helps you on the day-to-day?
No, just for the group here, we actually don't partner with many platforms at this point. So we do a lot of sheets and just through manual data.
Great. One last question, I would say we're coming up on time. Jen, I wanted to ask you a little bit about some successful programs that you've seen that thrive. Again, the iteration is key, as you mentioned, that have resulted in better employee experience, high engagement, and how does it relate back to real estate planning?
Great question. So, and as far as surveying goes, we do a lot of the pulse surveys through Culture Amp. That right now is our go-to. We're not using any other platform right now. That could change in the future. So we've partnered with our L&D team and our ERG teams because my entire team reports into the head of culture. We all partnered together to come up with themes. We themed each quarter, and we support each other in driving some of these events. And it's actually helped to drive in-person participation and collaboration. One of the things that we all have partnered on, which is coming up, is our September, which is something that's being run by the HR team. But they've partnered with us, and how can we get folks in? How can we make this how can we get folks in the office? Then how can we support the initiative? So what we're doing is we're bringing folks in and we're encouraging them to do walking meetings instead of sitting in front of a video. And that's one way we can support the HR initiative. We can get folks on site. And then while we're there, we can also plan some sort of other event. Also the predictability event, I think someone called it the sprinkler surprise. Our CEO loves the hump day cart, which was a big thing before COVID. And we brought that back. And we've actually seen an uptick in folks coming in on Wednesday because it's always a surprise. What's on the hump day cart? Sometimes, it could be treats. One day it was like egg rolls. Like it's very different. Like no one knows what it's going to be. And our workplace experience coordinators drive that, which is so fun. And so we're looking to implement some of these weekly things to bring folks in. Tuesday and Thursday, we're noticing are our heaviest days. And we're going to continue to track it to the end of the year. there. But also we have some of these larger employee appreciation programs, like we do the Legend of the Month. And we did something very old school, and whoever gets the Legend of the Month and it's voted on, we put their picture on a plaque and we hang it up in the local office. And people get such a thrill out of going in and seeing it. And it makes people really excited and proud. And I cannot point to any analytics that is making folk come in for this, but it gives them joy. And is it something that's going to show up on a Pulse survey? I hope so. We'll have to drive the right questions to kind of get the answers that we're looking for. But those kinds of little things bring people so much joy. We brought a vending machine back in the London office, and it's all people talk about. Like, I'm going to go in because I want to use the vending machine in the London. It's these weird small things because they want to hang out with their friend or connect or collaborate. So anyway, all of that to say, it all leads into some of these larger employee engagement programs that we're working on, but we try to tie it into an office-based event, either to kick it off, to support it, or to wrap it up when we're coming towards the end of it.
Excellent. Oh my God, the event, yeah, a lot of good ideas. Super cool. And I think that's part of it, is that it needs to be unique and tailored to the company culture, as you mentioned. So really inspiring. Thank you. Morgana, question to you in terms of, and maybe to the entire forum, like you've seen so much in the last few years. What do you think about the future, basically? What trends do you think that are the future workplace and real estate holds? And how are you preparing for that?
Yeah, I think first, I'm really glad, I think, that we're past this return to office and RTO. I think I've felt for a very long time that is a static point in time, but we have to continue carrying the employee experience beyond that. And so I think something I'm really passionate about is just the flexibility in this new world. And if it's not table stakes yet, it very soon will be, where an employee won't join a company if they don't have that personal flexibility for themselves to be able to manage their schedule, at least somewhat, right? If you have 5 days in a week and you have employees come in 3 days, they're in the office more often than not. They don't have that flexibility for their lives, really. And so I think that as a people team or a workplace professional, as workplace professionals, we can't solve every employee issue, right? There's really too many out there. But one thing that we can do, and that every company can do, is provide that flexibility. Human nature and human behavior isn't going to change drastically. We want to see each other in person. We want to connect with each other. And so we can foster that in a really productive way that not only helps the business, but also creates these opportunities for connection and belonging for employees. And so I just really hope that it becomes, again, I just hope that it becomes table stakes, and that more companies are offering flexibility, and that we're not just thinking about the in-office experience and the remote experience. I think that there's this, in between as well, where yes, I'm a hybrid employee, but I would love a desk book or a space booking tool, so that if I want to go to San Francisco for the day, instead of going down to Palo Alto, like, I have the opportunity to do that. And that the company supports that. And so I'm hopeful that flexibility will become table stakes in the future.
Excellent. Really inspiring. Anything to add from the rest of the panelists on trends that you think? And I think maybe the last point here would be, how do we tie this? And Morgana, I think it's a really important note that there is no remote experience and in office experience. There is the connection between all of those experiences. And how do you drive this? Anything to add from our panelists on this? Great. So I think one last question I would say, and this is for Jamie, I think it's a little bit related to this, which is, what type of initiative are you driving? And this is part of the DNA of the company, I would say, the product itself, for employees to stay engaged, whether they're remote or hybrid, right?
Yes, absolutely. We've touched on events, which I think we all know: happy hours, on sites, ERG events, hackathons. But also, we regularly present our all hands meetings live, which again, I think helps drive engagement in the office. We've recently implemented a Slack tool called Scoop as well, which runs like a weekly poll to see when people are interested in coming into the office. You can book like coffee dates with people. So I think it helps teams kind of better engage. You can also follow people when they say they're coming into the office. So maybe if you want to follow like, your chief people officer or your CEO, you can do that. We also host like in-office health and webinar programs, and virtual, I should say, such as webinars, in-office massages, blood drives, stuff like that. And I think one big thing I'm really trying to push for, and again, kind of get in the room early, is potentially not hosting our holiday parties this year in lieu of hosting a larger company-wide offsite, because I think that's where we're really struggling. It's like the teams are great and connected, but it's sort of this, right now it's this larger company-wide buy-in. Like people are feeling a little bit disconnected, I think, from the company as a whole. And I think something like a company-wide offsite where we can really rally them up and drive those cross-functional conversations and connections will really help us sort of rebuild that in this new chapter.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're at time. Appreciate you all for joining. It was a pleasure. And see you next time in the next Coffee with Gable and webinar. Talk to you soon and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.